Director Patel, I found Senator Booker's questioning really bizarre. He asked you, have you reassigned FBI agents from human trafficking to immigration issues? What the hell does it mean to reassign someone from human trafficking to immigration? The greatest human trafficking in the world has been over the last 4 years at our southern border. It is modern-day slavery that the Democrats still defend. And how many children have you found that were victimized by the open borders of the previous administration?
4,700.
4,700. And yet, oddly, I don't hear a Democrat here saying, gosh, thanks for protecting those kids. It's been reported that there were chat rooms of transgender activists that indicated some degree of potentially of foreknowledge of this murder.
We're still developing that.
Do you believe Antifa is a terrorist organization?
I believe Antifa is associated with a lot of violence in this country. As to its designation, I'll leave that to the appropriate authorities.
So I would encourage the administration to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization, to go systematically after Antifa. They've committed acts of violence all over the country. I believe the money should be fought and prosecuted under RICO.
Senator Booker spent his entire exchange accusing Patel of reassigning FBI agents from human trafficking to immigration enforcement. Ted Cruz walked in immediately after and asked one question that reframed the entire argument. Are Mexican cartels engaged in human trafficking? Yes. Then what the hell does it mean to reassign someone from human trafficking to immigration? The largest human trafficking operation in the world has been running at the southern border for 4 years. And not one Democrat thanked the FBI for finding 4,700 children victimized by it. Then the Charlie Kirk assassination details that nobody else asked about directly. The shooter's roommate confirmed as a transgender person. Transgender chat rooms potentially having foreknowledge of the murder. And the bullet casings, engraved with both Antifa and LGBT wording. Then Cruz goes after the money. Matching tents at anti-Semitic college protests. Organized funding behind Antifa riots, BLM riots, pro-open border violence. Follow the money. RICO prosecutions. And Patel confirms, extensive investigations already ongoing. This is the hearing exchange that went places no other senator went. Subscribe now, because this series covers everything, not just the exchanges that fit one side of the story.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I have to say, it used to be that to see theater, you had to go to the Kennedy Center. Now, apparently, you need only go to the Senate Judiciary Committee and see our Senate Democrats berating the director of the FBI, which, okay, it's not, partisan politics is not new in the United States Congress. But what is remarkable is what Senator Booker was berating Director Patel about. He wasn't berating him for failing to do his job, but rather he was furious for Director Patel for successfully doing his job. For 4 years, the Democrats under Joe Biden had an open border that undermined the safety of every single American. They allowed 12 million illegal aliens to come into this country, to invade this country, and every single day Americans were murdered, women were raped, children were assaulted by violent criminals that Democrats released. Director Patel, I found Senator Booker's questioning really bizarre. He asked you, have you reassigned FBI agents from human trafficking to immigration issues? Director Patel, are the Mexican cartels that are bringing people illegally into this country engaged in human trafficking?
Yes, sir.
What the hell does it mean to reassign someone from human trafficking to immigration? The greatest human trafficking in the world has been over the last 4 years at our southern border. It is modern-day slavery that the Democrats still defend. They still defend those open borders. Mr. Patel, he also said, did you reassign FBI agents from protecting children to immigration? How many children have you found that were victimized by the open borders of the previous administration?
4,700.
4,700. And yet, oddly, I don't hear a Democrat here saying, gosh, thanks for protecting those kids.
35% increase year-to-date last year.
Cruz's reframe of the Booker exchange is the sharpest partisan counterargument in this entire series, and the underlying factual point is harder to dismiss than the political framing around it. The cartel human trafficking question is genuinely significant. If the FBI's immigration enforcement surge is targeting the same criminal organizations responsible for the largest human trafficking operation at the southern border, then the distinction between immigration work and human trafficking work becomes operationally meaningless. Separating them is a political argument, not an investigative one. The 4,700 children statistic is real and documented. A 35% year-over-year increase in child victims identified and rescued. Cruz's point about democratic silence on that number is a legitimate rhetorical challenge. Whether the silence reflects policy disagreement about immigration enforcement methods or genuine indifference to child victims is a characterization each viewer has to make independently. What Cruz raises next shifts from the border entirely to the assassination that has hung over this entire hearing series since it happened.
Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was assassinated because of his political views. We're living in a time of enormous division and tragically hatred that manifested in evil that we saw last week. Now, the FBI, working in concert with state and local law enforcement, apprehended what appears to be, in all likelihood, the murderer, and you did so in just 33 hours. So I want to start by just congratulating you and the FBI agents and state and local law enforcement for successfully apprehending the murderer in less than a day and a half. In the wake of that assassination, we have seen far too many people on the left celebrating the assassination. We've seen Democrats, we've seen activists cheering it on. We've seen tragically teachers in high schools, teachers in elementary schools, university professors cheering on the murder of Charlie Kirk. You and I both knew Charlie well. He was a good friend. He was an extraordinary man. And I will say there's a great deal of discussion about what to do about it. Under our Constitution, under the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, speech is protected. And that's true even for vile speech. Someone can stand up and say the most hateful thing, and it's protected by the First Amendment. Nazis and Klansmen can march in the streets, and even though their speech is bigoted and horrible and racist, the First Amendment protects it. Conduct, however, is not protected by the First Amendment, particularly conduct that is violent. Violent conduct that is threatening others, that is harassing others, that is injuring or in this case murdering others is most assuredly not protected by the First Amendment. And so I would encourage you and the FBI to focus on conduct. Now, speech can guide you to those engaged in conduct. And I will say one question that I have and many have, and I recognize this is an ongoing investigation, so I don't want you to say anything that would compromise the investigation. But what can you tell us at this point about what evidence there exists of other individuals who may have had prior knowledge of this assassin's plans to murder Charlie Kirk on September 10th?
Generally speaking, we've interviewed numerous people, family members and friends, including the partner, to provide us with a detailed history of the knowledge he may have had, the suspect may have had prior to. We're still mapping out who, if anyone, was involved as an accomplice. As I said, the investigation is ongoing. We're also speaking to and going to interview numerous individuals online who were part of a chat group that was involved in this heinous assassination. And we're also going to work with our state and local partners out in Utah to find out what community organizations, if any, participated or had any foreknowledge of this information. But it's very much ongoing. I remind everybody that it's not even been a week since Charlie's tragic death.
Cruz's First Amendment framing here is the most legally precise thing said about the Kirk assassination response in any hearing, and it matters beyond the political context. The distinction between protected speech and unprotected conduct is foundational. Teachers celebrating a murder on social media are exercising First Amendment rights, however reprehensible. Someone who knew about the plan in advance and said nothing is a different legal and moral category entirely. Cruz is telling Patel where the FBI's energy should go, not after people who said ugly things, but after people whose conduct aided or enabled what happened. The accomplice investigation detail Patel provides is significant. Numerous people interviewed, an online chat group being investigated, community organizations in Utah being examined for foreknowledge. The investigation is clearly larger than a single shooter. Whether it produces additional charges and what those charges reveal about the network around the shooter is the story that follows this hearing. Then Cruz asks the questions about the shooter's background that nobody else went near directly, and the answers are the most specific new information produced in this hearing.
Is it accurate? It's been widely reported that the assassin's roommate was a transgender man who was transitioning to be female, and it's also been reported that they may have been romantic partners. Is that accurate?
Yes, Senator.
And I assume the FBI is investigating. It has also been reported that there were transgender chat rooms that may have had some awareness of the plan to commit this murder. Is that accurate as well?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
It's been reported that there were chat rooms of transgender activists that indicated some degree of potentially of foreknowledge of this murder.
We're still developing that.
Do you have any information the bullet casings had on them both Antifa and LGBT wording on them? Do you have any indication of the source of those engravings and what inspired them?
As to the actual source, we're still developing that.
I want to encourage you in the course of this investigation, absolutely go after anyone who aided and abetted. But I want to more broadly encourage you, follow the money. The violence we are seeing is not purely organic. There is, I believe, significant money that is spreading dissension, that is spreading violence.
3 specific factual questions. 3 answers. 1 confirmation and 2 still developing. The roommate confirmation is the only clean yes in this section. The transgender chat room foreknowledge question and the bullet casing engraving question both get still developing, which is the appropriate answer for an active ongoing investigation, but also the answer that leaves the most significant questions open. The bullet casing detail is the most explosive specific fact in this entire exchange. Engravings referencing both Antifa and LGBT slogans on the casings used in a political assassination. If that's accurate and the source is established, it fundamentally changes the nature of the case from a lone actor to an ideologically connected network. Patel's still developing answer means that connection hasn't been confirmed or ruled out yet. These are the details that make the next section of Cruz's questioning about money, networks, and RICO prosecutions feel less like political rhetoric and more like a specific investigative theory being tested in real time.
Do you believe Antifa is a terrorist organization?
I believe Antifa is associated with a lot of violence in this country. As to its designation, I'll leave that to the appropriate authorities.
So I would encourage the administration to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization, to go systematically after Antifa. They've committed acts of violence all over the country, and the shell casings have multiple references to slogans that Antifa has popularized. I believe there is considerable money funding it. I would note that I've introduced legislation called the Stop Funders Act. Stop Funders Act would add rioting to the list of predicate offenses under RICO. I believe the money should be tracked and prosecuted under RICO, and both the Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots of a couple of years ago and the pro-open border riots in Los Angeles and other cities of this past year, I believe there was significant money behind those riots. I'm not the only person who noticed at the anti-Semitic protests and violent protests on college campuses that many of the tents all matched. And so I would ask, would it aid your ability to prosecute these matters if Congress passed into law the Stop Funders Act and if rioting was added to the list of predicate offenses for RICO?
Yes.
Talk to me about the efforts of the FBI to go after the funders of the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses, the pro-open border protests in cities, and potential LGBT violence. Talk to me about the efforts to go after the money of those who are funding and promoting violence.
As I've always said, Senator, money doesn't lie, and we've been following the money. And so that's what we're doing, issuing lawful process to organizations involved with criminal activity, because the money's got to come from somewhere, and it has to be funded somehow. So we have extensive investigations ongoing into numerous organizations that are related to violent criminal activity.
Cutting off the money will make America much safer, and that is the core job of the FBI. And I thank you for doing your job.
The follow the money argument is where Cruz moves from political framing into specific investigative theory, and Patel's confirmation that extensive investigations are already ongoing is the most substantive answer in this entire exchange. The Antifa designation question is the one Cruz most clearly doesn't get the answer he wants. Patel won't call Antifa a terrorist organization, says associated with a lot of violence, and leaves formal designation to appropriate authorities. That's a careful answer that preserves operational flexibility without committing to a political designation that would carry specific legal consequences and potentially complicate ongoing investigations. The matching tense observation is the detail that the political violence money question hinges on. If protest infrastructure at anti-Semitic college protests was coordinated, same equipment, same organization, that suggests funding networks rather than spontaneous gatherings. Whether that coordination constitutes criminal conspiracy under RICO is the legal question Cruz's Stop Funders Act is designed to answer. Patel's yes on whether the legislation would help, followed by confirmation of extensive ongoing investigations into organizations related to violent criminal activity, is the most direct acknowledgement in any hearing in this series that the FBI believes organized funding is behind some of what has been documented as political violence. Money doesn't lie. Patel says it himself. The question is whether the investigations he describes here produce prosecutions that hold up in court, or whether follow the money becomes another commitment that disappears between the hearing room and the outcome. Subscribe to follow how this series tracks what actually happens after the cameras leave.